I don't make threats. If I had any intention of killing you, Rashad, you would never see it coming. You would simply, I don't know, disappear like a ghost.
Power
Omari,
never ends, ghosts
if you're
never die.
listening, Omari,
Omar.
your phone may be ringing.
Omar, we need you, buddy.
Now, today we're going to be discussing a topic that I have avoided for the best part of a week, but the comments just kept rolling in. Now, these aren't even 10% of the comments asking me to talk about Ghost, from DMs on Instagram, tags on X, asking me whether it's true, is Ghost returning because he was listed on IMDb for episode 10, is Ghost returning, what do I think? So today we are going to be breaking it down, not because of the IMDb listing, although I will run through my thoughts on him being listed on IMDb for episode 10, but more so because he was actually mentioned by Gary Lennon and Joseph Sikora in a recent interview with Anscape. I mentioned that if there was some substance to Ghost returning from other sources, not IMDb because I don't class that as a legit source, then that is something I will discuss. Well, we definitely now have it, and we're definitely going to be talking about what they mean by giving Omari Hardwick a call, because we know power never ends. We know this is only the end of Tom Egan's chapter in Chicago, and that is another topic that was discussed in this interview with Anscape, which I will leave the link to down below in the description section and comment section. That's the interview where at the end they mentioned Omari Hardwick may be getting a call pretty soon. But with that being said, let's talk about how Ghost will return, just not how many think, whether that be in Power Legacy or a Power movie. Now, first things first, we are going to be talking about the IMDb listing, is Ghost returning for Power Book 44 Season 3, Episode 10. Now, I don't know for certain, and it's just my opinion, but I don't believe he is, and there are a couple of reasons. Number 1. IMDb can be changed by anybody who creates, I believe, a premium account or submits information, however it's done, however it works. Whether it's similar to Wikipedia, I'm not 100% sure, but I do know for sure this can be changed by anyone. That's number 1. Number 2, Omari Hardwick has been listed plenty of times before over the past couple of years, and then we just have the internet going absolutely crazy. We have Power fans going absolutely nuts. But we've seen characters listed before, and I will give you a couple of examples. 2-Bit was listed for majority of Power Book 2 Ghost. There was Cristobal, who was also listed for Ghost at one stage as well. I'm sure Elisa Marie Proctor was even listed and named in a couple of articles across the internet, as well as IMDb. And those are just a couple of names off the top of my head. I'm sure there's plenty of other characters that were named, like Ramona, who haven't appeared since the end of Power. That's number 2. Now number 3. Every year there seems to be something that the Power fans just latch onto when it comes to Ghost. So we are going to be taking it back to 4 Season 2, Episode 5. Just before Episode 5, Joseph Sikora posted this over on social media, and at the time it sent every Power fan into frenzy, thinking Ghost is returning in Episode 5. Now, Season 2 was no doubt great. Season 2, Episode 5 was an amazing episode where we saw the death of Walter Flynn, Uncle Paulie. We saw Vic turning into Vic the Snitch. Jannard continued to behave like Double J. We saw the death of Jannard and Diamond's father, which changed their relationship going forward. And D-Mac was then also sent to Great Shores. It definitely was no doubt a great episode, but there was no Ghost. Now, you guys have also heard me mention this before. History doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme. And this is a classic example of history rhyming. Same thing here with the IMDb listing. It doesn't mean that Omari Hardwick is returning in episode 10, because I don't believe that he is. We're going to get into how I do think he will return in just a moment. But just because he's listed on an article or IMDb, you do have to take it with a pinch of salt. Unless it is Deadline or Variety or a confirmed source, then you definitely have to take it with a pinch of salt. Now number 4, there are so many storylines to finish in Power Book 4 Force, including maybe even the phone call to Tariq. That was from the end credit scene of Ghost Season 4. On top of closing all of these character arcs, potentially Tariq's return, how would they even fit in or hype up Ghost showing up? It just simply doesn't make sense, at least not at this moment in time anyway. There's the storyline around Tommy and Maria, the pregnancy storyline. Does she survive or does she go to Mexico? What happens with Kay Egan? Will Miguel Garcia survive? How does the storyline end for Shanti Showstopper? Does she betray Tommy, or is she someone that will take over Chicago with Miguel, leaving Tommy to go off with Tariq to continue in Power Legacy? On Tommy himself, is he run out of Chicago or does he leave on his own accord? With law enforcement, does Bobby DeFranco manage to find the evidence to put the handcuffs on Tommy, and is that why he has to leave? Or is Stacey Marks' murder pinned on someone else? What happens with AUSA Seng now that he's been rumbled? What happens with Vic the Snitch now that we know he never left on the private jet with Ray? What happens with the rest of CBI, Raheem, Big Smurf? Will Jannard meet his end at the hands of D-Mac? Or is there a potential possibility where Jannard even survives? Will anybody die at the funeral when CBI roll up to it, turning it into a potential red funeral? There's a whole shootout and war between Tommy, Miguel, D-Mac, CBI and the Marquez cartel. Will Roberto Ortega be taken off the chessboard? Does Che survive, who leads the Estrada cartel? What happens with Genesis and D-Mac? Gary Lennon has teased that he has left some threads open come the end of Force, so not all of these questions will be answered in episode 10. I personally think most will be, but I do also personally believe there's going to be characters who survive that we don't expect to survive, and where they leave storylines and loose threads open that we don't expect them to leave open, which Gary Lennon can then pull into the world of Power in future spin-offs, if he decides to. He mentioned this in an interview a while ago, and that's when I started thinking a couple of weeks ago, yeah, now it kind of makes sense if Tommy and Shanti team up, which we did eventually see in episode 8, her taking over Chicago for Tommy while he goes off with Tariq. But with all of these storylines that I've just mentioned, and there are a couple that are brewing in the background that I haven't even touched on yet that we will come to in this upcoming week, but with all of these storylines to close or leave open, including potentially the return of Tariq with a phone call, just where on earth would Ghost even fit into the storyline? They would have to answer so many questions in terms of where he's been, why now, how, and why in Chicago, why not in New York. It definitely doesn't make sense at all. Now, having said that, does that mean I believe Omari Hardwick will never return in the world of Power? I do think he will, just not how we think, and just not how many people want him to return. I do think he will return either in a hallucination or potentially to narrate Power Origins. I mean, just think about it for a moment. Look at all the hype and noise that we're getting just from an IMDb listing that probably isn't even accurate. Do you guys realize if people are going crazy just off an IMDb listing, just imagine what would happen if it was the real deal. Now, the internet would absolutely break on all fronts if he did actually appear, even if it was just in, say, a hallucination scene, or there was a news article to say that he was officially returning, maybe even just to voice over Power Origins, or there was a leak of some sort behind the scenes of him filming. Just imagine how that would send the Power fans on the internet. It definitely would break. But don't you guys think the higher ups at Starz also know that? If Omari Hardwick's being listed on IMDb and the fans speculating about his return, creating theories of how he's returning, don't you guys think they already know that? It definitely does sound like a classic Power move to build up hype for episode 10, but just hold on to that thought, we're going to come back to it in just a moment. First, I do want to talk about Tommy leaving Chicago, and that will lay the foundation for how I personally believe Ghost will return, just not how many think.
When Gary Lennon and the other writers and I were mapping out our third season, we saw that we were telling a complete story, and that this was the perfect opportunity to stay true to our artistic vision and make this the final chapter in Tommy's journey in Chicago. But don't worry, Tommy's journey is far from over with. We're just getting warmed up, and I can't wait to show you what we have planned next.
Now, that was Joseph Sikora speaking a while ago when he was filming 4-4 Season 3. He gave us the announcement that this particular story and chapter is over, but it's not the end of Tommy's story arc. We then had the announcement of Power Legacy, which hasn't been given the green light as of yet. It hasn't been 100% confirmed, but Gary Lennon and the writing team are currently in the writer's room. That was confirmed over on Instagram, and I do assume we're probably going to be in for some sort of announcement post episode 10. Once episode 10 does finish, best believe there will be an announcement on what's coming next in the world of Power, which most likely won't be in Chicago. Gary Lennon and Joseph Sikora did do an interview with Anscape, and Joseph Sikora did mention the following. Well, I don't know that I'm ready to say goodbye to the character, but I'm ready to say goodbye to Chicago. Gary Lennon did also confirm that Tommy will be leaving Chicago as well, and that's why in recent weeks I've been building up to the question and topic around how does it end for Tommy in Chicago? Does he leave the city in Shanti and Miguel's hands while he goes operational, maybe multi-city with Tariq? Is he having to deal with a new threat? Or is he run out of Chicago because of law enforcement? We know Bobby DeFranco will still be on the hunt for justice for Stacey Marks, and he did make Tommy that promise at the end of episode 8. Is that why he has to leave Chicago? We're definitely going to find out in episode 10. I'm excited to find out as well. Is he run out of Chicago? How does it end? But I do think we all know it is also building up to Power Legacy and the next present day Power show, with Tariq by his side and maybe also hopefully D-Mac. I'm sure they'll definitely answer the question around the phone call. They definitely have been teasing it, most recently in the trailer for episode 10.
Alright, so tell them to bring the smoke. We'll come lay him the fuck out. Simple.
Am I calling a favor?
Now, I do think it only makes sense that he has called Tariq. I read a funny comment on my breakdown for episode 9 where someone said they're now taking a 2-week break because it will take Tariq 2 weeks to walk to Chicago. But once he turns up in Chicago, they deal with what needs to be dealt with. But with power being classic power, once you solve problem, another one just simply has to pop up, just like Ghost once said to Kanan back in season 2.
But you know how this business is, Kay. As soon as you take out one threat, another one pops up. Fucking circle of life.
That's what I do think will happen in this instance. They most likely will end on some sort of cliffhanger that branches into the next current day power show, which in my opinion then gets us one step closer to the end of Tom Egan's story arc. Gary Lennon has previously said that he does have an ending in mind, and they do kind of have an idea of how the last frame looks. He knows how Tommy's story ends, and is also currently in talks with Starz about how they can make that happen, and the only clue that he was giving was never say never. But most recently, Joseph Sikora did recently do an interview with Hip Hop Gamer as well, and he also teased that they're looking to make a power movie. They've kind of started to make the notes on that, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's when we see the end of Tommy Egan's story arc. I still believe the Italians will be a story arc that does come full circle, and that will be Tommy's endgame, Elisa Marie Proctor. But circling back round to Ghost appearing, just not how we think, this is when I think we'll see Ghost appear, either in Power Legacy or in a Power movie.
Power never ends, ghosts
if you're
never die.
listening, Omari,
Omar.
your phone may be ringing.
Omar, we need you, buddy.
Now, right at the end of the interview with Anscape, both Gary Lennon and Joseph Sikora did tease the fact that they are going to be making a call to Omari Hardwick, and I do think they will, for this exact reason, which is to perhaps bring Tommy Egan's journey full circle, and also the fact that it is Gary Lennon who will be the showrunner of the new show and the Power movies, if we do see a Power movie or two. The fact that we have Gary Lennon at the helm, who really has done a phenomenal job with for season 3. He's done a great job with the storyline and the writing. I do think Omari Hardwick will look at it and think, yeah, I do actually like it. I like the sound of it. It does make sense. We know he was approached before, which was around the season 2 of Power Book 2 Ghost mark, where they went back and forth, but they couldn't agree on terms apparently. And I do think the storyline matters as well, because he did mention it does also depend on the storyline. I do think for Omari Hardwick to return as Ghost, the storyline just simply has to make sense, which is why I was saying before, it doesn't make sense for him to return in episode 10. At this moment in time, it doesn't make sense for him to return. It makes sense for Tariq to pop up in Chicago because of what they've teased, but just because of an IMDb listing, you can't say Ghost is returning because it just doesn't make sense for Ghost to return, whether that even be as an alive character or even in a hallucination. Maybe in a flashback if it's unused footage from Power. I'm not sure if they can do that. I'm not entirely sure how that would work. In my opinion, I do still believe Ghost is dead. I don't think he does come back as an alive character. And I do think it makes sense to see him in a hallucination scene right at the end of Tommy Egan's story arc. And that's how I think it'll happen. However, having said that, I have been reviewing Power and watching other TV shows long enough to know if they really do want to break the numbers and the records, then they can do the unthinkable if they want, because after all, it is TV. If that's the route that they want to go down, they can definitely make that happen. My opinion on that is, I just think it would take Power backwards rather than forwards, which should be Tariq and D-Mac's new partnership, Power Legacy. They are Power Legacy that moves forward, and Ghost Return being in Tommy Egan's movie perhaps, as his character arc comes to an end. That's how I personally see it happening. Not in 4 season 3 episode 10, not as an alive character, but right at the end as a hallucination. Because Joseph Sikora did tease again in that interview, characters can pop up in people's imaginations. So that's how I do think Ghost will return, just not how many think. And in my opinion, I do think he will return. I do think we will eventually see a hallucination scene at some point in the future, but I do think we are going to have to wait a little longer until Power Legacy, or maybe even the Power movies, for it to happen. But that's a wrap on my thoughts on Omari Hardwick's return as Ghost, the IMDb listing that so many of you guys wanted me to discuss. I personally don't think it means anything at this moment in time. I don't think he appears in episode 10. I'd love to be proven wrong, but I just don't see it happening with everything that they need to close off in terms of Power Book 4 Force. But with Tommy now set to leave Chicago, with Legacy now upon us and potentially even Power movies, that could even be the end of Tommy's character, that's when I think it makes sense to see Ghost. I have said it before, I personally think you can't end Tommy Egan's story arc without him seeing Ghost at least once more, and that's when I think it makes sense to see Ghost return, as well as maybe of course doing the voiceovers for Power Origins. But let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. I know this topic will divide a lot of opinions, so please keep it cordial in the comment section, but definitely drop your thoughts down below. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.